love me and I love you.
Content warning. The stories and themes shared throughout this podcast may contain themes that can be distressing for you. If needed, please pause and do what you need to do to take care of yourself. If needed, please reach out to a mental health professional for support.
Welcome back to another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. But like most times I do this, it's not Alana today. Dun dun dun. It is Eileen Filliben. So I met Eileen actually only a few minutes ago, but I've been getting to know her while preparing my notes for the show, and she has quite the story. So during her successful career as an attorney, HR consultant, and senior executive, Eileen was sidelined with major health issues, including, but not limited to, breast cancer twice by the age of 42, 15 major surgeries, debilitating chronic back and leg pain, chronic migraines, including one mimicking a stroke, depression, and PTSD. Her journey back to health involved a deep dive into the connection between the mind and the body using cutting edge techniques from neuroscience. Eileen was able to rewire her brain to overcome her health challenges. She uses her groundbreaking Rewire Go Higher framework, and I can't wait to dive into that today because I love neuroscience. She
Oh,
empowers
fabulous.
individuals and organizations to rise above obstacles, build sustainable resilience, and move forward with clarity and confidence. She's also passionate about patient advocacy. Speaking at medical and nursing schools, she helps students understand the enormous impact they have on their patients' lives, gain insight into what patients really want, and build a practical toolkit to help prevent burnout. Her links are going to be in the show notes, but holy smokes, welcome to the show, Eileen.
Thank you, Blair. Really appreciate this opportunity and thank you and your sister for doing this super important work because community really matters.
Yeah, it does. And, it's interesting when I read this that you have this framework based on neuroscience because I actually have my own framework based on neuroscience. And
Yes.
right, yes, and it's called the Navigating Grief Framework. And it's basically, I became the expert I wish I would have had it while going through the worst experiences of my life, including the loss of both of my parents, my father-in-law,
Mm,
and a baby.
mm,
And I'm neurodivergent, and I'm like, give me a list. Like, I just need a checklist. Like, what can I do to
yeah.
make a difference? And I just started researching and trial and error, and I created a framework based on neuroscience. So I really believe in it because
Oh,
like I'm 7 years, almost 7 years sober, and I didn't
congratulations.
relapse during all of this, and I got through like the darkest period that, I think hopefully I ever have to face, and it's all because of neuroscience. So
Amen.
I want to
Yeah.
dive into your story because you had breast cancer twice before the age of 42, many surgeries, debilitating pain, depression, PTSD. Like, why don't you share your story? And then let's dive into that and then how you came up with your framework.
Absolutely. So, in 2008, my health fell off a cliff. So, I was diagnosed with breast cancer for the second time. I was 42 years old. I had a 4-year-old at home and an 18-month at home. I had a double mastectomy that year that went completely off the rails. And within 12 weeks of that double mastectomy, I was hospitalized for two emergency surgeries back to back because of things that had gone awry during the double mastectomy. That year was also the year that I started with chronic migraines. And then I developed chronic back pain in 2009. Fast forward over the next 13 years, actually, I had just had debilitating chronic pain, had four failed back surgeries, including a two-level fusion. And the fourth one, they just kind of gave up on solving the root cause and they put something called a spinal cord stimulator in my back. So it's like a TENS machine if you've ever had PT. So it's these electrical zoot, zoot, zoot. So that is in my spine. I have a cute little battery pack in my butt, which I'm always telling my massage therapist, don't press too hard there. And then in 2021, I had a migraine that mimicked a stroke and paralyzed the left side of my body. And that was kind of my rock bottom, not personally, because health-wise I had incurred several worse things, but my son was an eighth grader slash ninth grader that year. It was COVID. He was having a lot of challenges. And I was in the hospital for a week, utterly unable to be that present for him mentally, emotionally, physically. And so I said, I've always, I thought all along that there was likely some golden thread that tied all of this together. And so I was attested for a bunch of autoimmune diseases, thinking it was none of that. But in 2021, again, after getting out of the hospital, I went on just this massive deep dive into research and discovered this whole brand of, excuse me, pain management or new therapies in pain management called pain reprocessing therapy, founded in neuroscience. So there are a couple key components which I think will resonate with you. One is that and a couple of your previous guests have mentioned this, your body's always talking to you,
Yes.
always. And I know that was an issue with myself. And I wasn't, it started with whispers, then it got a little louder, then it finally hit me over the head with a frying pan about 15 times until I, literally succumbed. And so your nervous system gets into overdrive. And that's great if you're being chased by a dinosaur or a tiger, for 20 minutes, but it's horrible on your system
Mhm.
if that's, chronic stress. Your body's being flooded with hormones and cortisol, which can be really damaging in the long term. So your nervous system's in fight, flight, or freeze. And this particular branch of pain management, one of its tenets is a stimulus comes into your body, goes up your spinal cord, and because of the data bank of memories you have about chronic pain, about migraines, it almost becomes an involuntary reflex. Like, oops, I know what this is. Oops, I know what this is. And so your body is, in a sense, misinterpreting signals that are safe as being not safe, as being
Mhm.
pain. So that's one component of it. The second component is the neuropathways in your brain. So I'm sure you're very familiar with
Mhm.
things that fire together, wire together. And that's true of the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And so if you're a chronic pain patient or migraine, and the research is just mind-boggling to me. They're now tying it to autoimmune diseases, but essentially and grief, which I'd love to hear more about your model, but your neuropathways kind of get locked and loaded through repetition. Fire together, wire together, fire together, wire
Mhm.
together, fire. And it's actually possible to interrupt those neuropathways and overwrite them with new and different ones that help your body interpret external stimuli as safe rather than as pain. So it was this huge aha for me. It just made sense on so many levels. And another underlying theme is stress is the devil, right? And until and unless we deal with our stress, it's going to show up in our bodies in all sorts of really unfortunate ways. So I started down this path, and up until that point, I had had 15 major surgeries over the course of multiple years, but 10 for 10 in a 10-year period. So I was just exhausted. And because of the back pain and leg pain, I became very opioid dependent.
Oh no.
So I was doing everything that Western Med had asked me to do, advised me to do, and wasn't getting better. And through this pain reprocessing therapy, I started with an app called Curable, which I'm shouting it from the mountaintops because it literally saved my life. And it teaches us how pain is generated in the brain and how sometimes those signals get confused. And then it helps us learn a lot of mind-body techniques, from journaling to meditation to group therapy to working to visualization, to help calm the nervous system
Mm.
and reinforce messages of safety. And that was really my turning point once I got into this group of people. And also, back, I was saying earlier how important community is and how it's so
Yeah.
wonderful that you're doing this through your podcast and your books, because it was really group therapy with other chronic pain sufferers and severe migraine sufferers, because up until that point, nobody in my life could relate. They
Yeah.
had no idea, because it was just one thing, another surgery, another hospitalization, another year. And so being with people who were going through on a similar journey and using the same tools was a huge breakthrough for me. So, well, let me pause there. That's the health. And so I'm really passionate about getting the message out to people who are in chronic pain, because it is really an invisible epidemic. There are about 51 million Americans, and I know you're in Canada, so forgive me. I don't have
That's
the
okay.
Canadian stats, but 51 million Americans who suffer with daily chronic pain, and 17 million who suffer with something called high impact chronic pain, which interferes with daily activities. And I was in that category for about 13 years. And it was so demoralizing, and I completely lost hope. So, very passionate about getting the message out to the chronic pain community and migraineurs and, other folks who could really have better health and less suffering if they could implement some of these techniques that were so helpful to me.
I love that. So is that work that you've learned like through the app and whatnot, what you implemented in your framework? Like let's talk into your framework. And
Sure.
first of all, thank you for sharing all that. That's a lot.
Oh, well, thank you for, giving me this platform, because you said something earlier where you felt you were best positioned to help somebody who was just like you.
Hmm.
And that's how I feel. So I don't mind sharing, because in that loss of hope, I was ready to take my own life. The pain was catastrophic, and Western medicine was giving me zero hope.
Mm.
And being without hope is a really, really dark place. And
Yes.
I simply couldn't imagine living another year, let alone another decade, without hope. And ultimately, it was my children, and I just could not leave them.
Mm.
And that's what kept me here. But to your earlier point, I feel like if I had known somebody like me who was, utterly lost hope, who was literally at the end of her rope and literally stumbled upon these tools, um, I just feel like I can help people. So on to my own model. So I spent I started my career as an attorney and found that was way too reactive and argumentative. And I'm much more about positivity and helping develop skills and talent. And so I spent most of my career as a strategic HR consultant and leadership development consultant. And so the more I got into this neuroplasticity of the brain, so it's essentially what we've been talking about. Neuroplasticity, fancy word for changeability. So you can absolutely change your brain over time. There are so many overlaps within whatever world you want it to be, frankly, whether it's your own health, awesome, whether it's your career, whether it's leadership. There are so many things. And for me, if I had to put it down into one word, it's resilience. And so helping, kind of rewiring your brain for resilience in all sorts of different circumstances. And, I have my model it's a little tacky, I know, but a lot of R words. So it's easier for me to remember. But I think resilience, that's an adjective that's attributed to people way after the fact, right? After they've been through it. And for my own journey, part of the resilience was realizing that it was up to me. Nobody else was coming, right? The cavalry wasn't on the other side of the hill. I really had to recognize that it was up to me to pull myself out of this. The other thing is resilience is messy, 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 messy. Like before I went through all this, I thought like resilient people had this superpower, right? And they had red capes in their closet and they did everything with ease and grace. It could not have been further from the truth. I mean, I was a hot mess, sobbing, crying, depression, PTSD. And I want people to understand because when you're in it, at least when I was in it, I don't know how you feel. I didn't feel resilient. I felt lost. I felt demoralized. I wanted to take my own life. I mean, it was horrible.
Mm,
So I want to inject that realism into people who are on a difficult path now. And resilient, it's not a straight line, right? I mean, I have been on so many zigzags, and I know you have too.
mhm,
And being younger and naive, I thought my life would unfold in this great straight path and everything would be wonderful. And obviously it didn't turn out that way.
mhm.
And now looking back, it's, kind of the detours are where I learned the greatest lessons. Um, Tough at times, really tough at times, but it's not linear. And even now, I'm doing so much better, but I still have setbacks. I still have pain flares, but I have the tools now when I do
Yeah,
have a flare to name it, recognize it, call a timeout.
yeah.
And one of my favorites is that resilience is a team sport. And as it was really before all of this unfolded, it was super hard for me to ask for help. I thought I had to do it all myself and keep a stiff upper lip and I am super blessed. I have a very large family, a caring family. I have an incredible tribe of friends. So I have an incredible support network, but I wasn't asking them for help. So that's another message that if somebody's in it, people want to help you. So allow them to help you because so they want to help, but they have no idea where to start or
Mhm.
what to ask or what to do. So relying on your support network was fundamental for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's great. And so if someone wants to access your framework, like how do they find it? Like what do they do?
Sure. So I have a website, eileenfilliben.com, which I guess will be in the show notes. And so I'm doing a lot of keynotes and workshops, and I do team building activities and, lots of podcasts. So really just trying to get the word out. And I have a special place in my heart for patients, especially chronic pain patients.
Mhm.
And if I can just mention that briefly, so I'm
Yeah,
also
please do.
yeah, as somebody who has been somewhat of a frequent flyer with the U.S. healthcare system,
Yeah.
I have seen really how broken it is, just utterly broken, and the devastating impact that has on patients and caregivers. And my feeling is that most medical professionals, they came into this industry to be healers and to help people. And our insurance system is so flawed.
Mm,
And all the financial incentives are in the exact wrong places. Doctors get to spend less and less and less time with patients and more time on paperwork. You have to get prior auths to do it's nuts. It's just nuts. So
yeah.
I'm also very into patient advocacy and trying to bring the patient point of view to some much needed healthcare reform in our country. And I know you Canadians are very, very fortunate. I'm sure it's not perfect, but you are a far, far cry from where we are.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. And I think it's amazing that you've taken everything you've learned on your healing and your experience as a patient, and you're able to do this work on various levels. Do you find like do you think that because I know like even like the beginning of your career being an attorney,
Mhm.
super high stress, high powered, do you think having a high stress job has an influence over, that golden thread through all of those health challenges you've navigated?
Absolutely. And I also think, do you read or listen to Gabor Mate at all,
Oh, of
Dr.
course I
Gabor?
do, yeah.
And his most recent work, The Myth of Normal, really speaks to that and how our culture is so crazy with it being, very achievement oriented. And he talks about, as a child, we have two primary needs. One is to attach,
Hmm.
so, food, shelter, live. And the other is to be our authentic selves, the two A's, attach, authentic. And if we have to choose between the two of them, we're going to go with attachment because we die otherwise, right? And so during childhood, and he's done tons of research, as have others, you may get conflicting messages from your parents. And my parents they loved us, they were very well intended. They had, um, and they had limited tools, right?
Yeah.
They had limited tools, so they did the best they could. And that said, there was alcoholism in the house,
Mm.
and that hit me hard for a wide variety of reasons. And that's the
Yeah.
other thing, adverse childhood experiences, or
Yeah.
ACEs, they impact different people differently because of our chemistry and our brains, all of that. But his fascinating work is about how we we adopt strategies as little kiddos to survive, to attach, that somehow are inconsistent with who we really are,
Mm.
our authentic selves. And those strategies are great to get us through a childhood, but then later in life, they're not so great, right? And I think for me, I was like, if you looked up high achiever, it was it was ridiculous. I just one high achievement after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. And so having gone through this work, I see that I was predisposed to have my nervous system go off the charts.
Hmm.
I was predisposed not to listen to my body.
Yeah.
I was predisposed to think stress was just normal. And I do think as a culture, there is a reckoning that we have to have with what are we asking of our people. And another big, I'm on a lot of soapboxes, I know, but mental health is as important as physical health.
Yeah.
And you truly cannot have one without the other.
Right.
And so if you are going to be in a super stressful job, awesome. And make sure that you're listening to your body. Make sure that you are actively engaging in stress relieving activities.
Hmm.
And I also think, as a mother with kiddos, what am I role modeling? Where were my priorities? What did all that look like? But long-winded answer, yes, I feel like I was predisposed to stress, and that had absolutely had a devastating impact on my health because I waited way too long. I just kept pushing it down and pushing it down. And it's like, and I forget, so this is a great analogy. I forget who did it, but it's like holding a beach ball underwater.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really like a really great visual, and thank you for sharing that. So, as we wrap up, um, what advice do you have for someone who is going through something similar, but at the beginning of when you started going through things?
Hmm.
What advice do you have?
So a few things, listen to your body. It's always talking to you. So listen while it's still whispering because it will continue to escalate until it gets your attention. Number two, it's okay not to be okay. And I think it's a huge risk in our social media focused society to think that everybody's having their Instagram, that their whole life are their Instagram reels. And that's just not real life.
Hmm.
So it's completely okay not to be okay. And, resilience is super messy. So you may feel super messy, and that's perfectly part of the course. And let your team rely on your team, ask for help. You would do the same for your friends, your family, your neighbors. So stop, especially women, frankly, we're socialized not to ask for help.
Hmm.
So please reach out and rely on your network.
Yes, I love that. That's such beautiful advice, and that's what we stand for here at the Global Resilience
Yes.
Project.
Yes.
Um, Eileen, thank you so much for sharing
Well,
everything and being here today.
thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And thanks again for the platform and what you're doing with both the podcast and the book series. It's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to another episode of Resilient AF. Eileen just reassured you what I've been saying every week. You are not alone. It is okay to not be okay. You will get through it. You have to put one foot in front of the other. You have to want to feel better. You, you don't have to do it alone. Let us be that lighthouse in the storm for you. And just remember, friends, you are resilient AF. That's a wrap for another episode of Resilient AF with Blair and Alana. And thank you for listening. Are you feeling inspired to bounce forward?
Let's connect at theglobalresilienceproject.com, where you can read many stories of resilience, buy our books, shop our clothing line, learn more about how to strengthen your resilience muscle, be empowered, and more.
Remember, friends, you are resilient AF.